I am here to chat about how to win at Spades and DevOps. This is secretly an excuse to teach you all how to play spades, and that's going to be okay. So to start off with, who already knows how to play spades? Okay, about half the room. And who doesn't know? Just so okay, cool, about half. So we'll get that number up for sure. And that's okay if you didn't if you raise your hand that you didn't know, perfectly fine. You've probably seen a picture like this floating on the internet somewhere, kind of inciting a lot of conversation, mostly argument, about what the right way to win at spades looks like and how to bid. I will help you understand what that means. I did not grow up playing spades. I'll introduce myself. My name is Ajuna Kyaruzi. I grew up in Tanzania. I played a different game that's very similar to spades. There are many games very similar in this realm. I just heard of another one from a co-organizer the other day in Germany. I am a much better spades player than a photographer. That is my thumb in the corner. This is from my favorite beach growing up back home. But the scariest part about spades is that there's a ton of terms. There are all of these that can get very confusing. Books, bids, bats, board. Last time I gave this talk once before, I heard one called Boston. That one was new to me, so every time I do this, I learn new ones. So if you know any more, find me later and we'll find out. But overwhelmingly, the thing that you need to know is the rules. So we'll start off with knowing where to start. So let's review the rules so you can know how to play when we do. So I'll go through these quickly, but generally spades is played as a 4-person game with a team of 2 sitting across from each other. So you are in a team, so your partner's across from you, and then you're usually playing with another team. Technically, you can play it with more people, but every other place I've played it, it's usually been 4 people. You'll take turns being the dealer, and the dealer will deal every card to each player. So in a standard 52-card deck, everyone will get 13 cards. And then as a team, you will speak out loud and say how much you think you might win. So of 13, how many do you think of those rounds or books you think that you'll win? So don't go higher than 13 because that means someone is definitely overestimating themselves. And then you start the game. Usually the player that leads is to the right of the dealer and you kind of go around. And generally when a player leads with a card, you have to follow and play with that same suit of that card if you have it. The highest value wins, and then you win that round, trick, book, and then the player that wins starts the next hand. So generally the way that it goes is the highest card is the ace of spades, then it's the king, queen, and you kind of work your way down to the 2 of spades. One of the biggest rules is a player cannot lead with a spade until they've been played. But if you don't have any cards of the leading suit, that's when you can start playing spades. And then from there, you can bring out more spades. The points are scored equal to your bid. So if you and your partner say that you think of the 13 rounds, you can win 5, and you get your 5, you get 50 points. If you say you can win 5 and you get 6, you get 51 points. And if you say that you can win 5 and you get 4, you get negative 50 points. So definitely you're wanting to hit as close to the actual amount that you'll get. One of the biggest rules and why people get very upset at each other is called table talk. So generally, because you're sitting across from your partner, other than discussing at the beginning how much you think you'll win, you're not supposed to tell each other, hint to each other what you think, what cards you have in your hand. You can't talk across the table. So generally, that's one place that people fight a lot, but the main place that people fight a lot is what we call reneging. So reneging is when you fail to play a card of a leading suit earlier and maybe try to win that suit by playing a spade, and then later down the line, you're caught playing with that suit down. So for example, if there's a time when hearts were leading and a player throws a spade to win that hand, and then later they play a heart, if you remember, you can catch them, and usually there is a penalty for that. It varies. Most times I've heard is usually you lose 3 books. So almost always that makes you lose your bid. Other times, it can be fisticuffs. It's really depending on you and the room that you're in. I'm going to use an online option to describe how this game is played. I really love cardgames.io. They have a ton of different games, but I specifically mostly play spades here. You can play virtually with multiplayer, so usually my spades partner, who's now my life partner, and I play virtually. We play with each other when I'm traveling and stuff like that. But the first the first part of spades, and connecting that back to DevOps, is that the culture definitely beats the rules. It depends what group that you're in. You gotta talk to people. You gotta figure out what are the traditions, how is the right way to play. This is a very controversial card depending on how you play spades. I mostly describe spades as the ace of spades being the highest. There is a way of playing spades where that is not necessarily true. So if you throw this card out too early, which I did when I was very young, still playing spades, you can definitely piss off a lot of people. What I'm talking about is it depends on what you're playing. So most often, it's beginners, and some parts of the country play ace high, where ace of spades is the highest card. I first learned how to play spades in college in Iowa. I'll tell you about how I got there another time. But generally, the ace of spades is the highest. In Atlanta and other places in the South, Joker, Joker, Deuce, Deuce is a way of playing spades that is the most common here, where you include the jokers and remove the two of, you move two cards. So it's usually the two of, oh no, sorry, language. Thank you. Sorry. Swahili has a different word for clubs, which means like shit. So I was trying not to say that word out loud, but here we are. Anyway, so you remove those two and include the two of the jokers. And then the two jokers become the highest card, and then the two of diamonds, the third highest card, then the two of spades, and then the ace, and it goes down. So in the time when I played, didn't know that throughout the two of hearts, two things happened. One, I definitely cut way too early, used a very high card to win a round I wasn't supposed to. But two, I ended up reneging by accident because I cut with spades despite having that card because I thought that that was the diamond that I wanted to play, and I was wrong. So the room that I was in was very upset at me, but also I had to know what the culture was. There are two other ways you could play spades that are less common. Joker, Joker, Ace, where it doesn't use the two of diamonds and the two of spades as being very high, and Joker, Joker, Deuce, Ace, where it just uses the two of spades. I don't play these as often, so I'll just skip over them really quickly. But connecting this back to DevOps, your priorities and your processes definitely matter, right? Generally, when you're playing, their best practices in the field become the most important thing and the thing that you should do immediately. But when you're newer on a team and you want to know how to do things, you go to the documentation. You read it. If it exists, if it doesn't exist, you ask around and they tell you, generally, this is how we do things. And then if you're not particularly sure after that, you talk to your boss and they tell you. Or if they're not around, you ask the closest subject matter expert and they tell you. Or just the random person next to you, you agree and they're the right thing and then you do the thing. But generally, what your boss tells you does trump everything else. If they decide that the best practices is wrong for whatever reason, that becomes the most important way to play. Hopefully you have a better boss than that, and they're open to feedback and you can discuss, but overwhelmingly you do have to follow what your organization says. And a big part of that is the culture, right? I work at Datadog, we love documentation. Like most companies, when we have an incident, we analyze it, we write it down, we write a postmortem, and that's the rule. When you have an incident, you write it down. But that's the culture that builds up that rule, right? If we just generally had the rule of that's the thing that we should do, but no one followed it or kind of half did it, it wouldn't be particularly helpful to learn from incidents. We also keep a catalog of other like performance and reliability wins on our Confluence page. And I think that culture of celebrating wins makes it easier to want to do those wins. So if you promote people either financially or just giving them props virtually in a space where they can get more kind of street cred, I guess is the word that's going to come to mind right now, or in general, just having that culture of celebrating and documenting your wins can make it much easier for people to want to go above and beyond or outside their realm to improve the things around them. So for better, for worse, culture definitely can trump the rules that are going on. I have worked in places where the culture has not been as great. I've worked in places where the culture has been fantastic, specifically for DevOps, being in a place where when you cause an incident, people are excited that you found a way that the system wasn't supposed to work and now they can fix it, rather than being upset at you and firing you because you made a mistake. That can make a big difference in how you live in that environment. Okay, back to spades. So generally, whenever people post cards like this, they want people to virtually make a bid on how, if they had that hand, what does that look like? So I'm going to have us go through my system now. This is what cardgames.io looks like, and we're all playing as me at the bottom. I would love to hear from folks what you think the bid should be in here. Yeah, in the back. 5, okay. Couple risky 6s, okay, I'm with it. Anyone else has a different answer? Okay. I bid 5. Sometimes I can be pretty aggressive and bid 6. I'm not against it. The other people around the table bid a similar amount. However, after you bid, if we remember again, you're not supposed to have any table talk. If you don't recognize this code, it's from a show called Red Table. That's why I introduced it. But anyway, you're not supposed to coordinate with your partners, but there are rules against communicating, but when you have to figure out how to play things, you don't really, the main thing that you don't want to do is butt heads with your partner, because that can cause y'all to not meet your bid. Going back to DevOps, that's pretty similar. You're cooperating and trusting with your teammate. That means trusting that your partner is going to play well and not trying to overbid to overcompensate for them or the other way around. You want to make sure that you are finding the right balance. And similarly, in DevOps, we want to tear down silos. We hear that all the time, and we want to have that collaboration. But in a lot of our modern systems, cooperation beats collaboration. And what I mean by that is most of our systems now are kind of decoupled into these small pieces, and teams work independently and quickly. If you don't trust that the other people is doing, then you're going to collaborate, you're going to butt heads and going to be duplicating a lot of work. Generally, you want to work together, but that means fully allowing them to work on their stuff and you working on your stuff, and together it'll come together with the right APIs where you can work together seamlessly. You want to make sure that your stuff is stable and reliable and trust for them to do the same, and that's how things can move a little bit faster. So we're going to go through a hand of spades here. So generally, I forgot to ask. With this hand, what would people start with? It's a lot of different. The A? One of the aces, okay. Okay. So yeah, I started with the ace, kind of threw that out there. Was able to win that hand as it kind of went around. I threw out my other ace, as other people suggested, just to get it out of the way. And then I threw the king of clubs. Generally here, I was a little bit worried throwing out my king, which is why I didn't do it a little bit earlier, despite knowing that I had the ace as well. The reason is we know that there are 13 cards of each suit, and I had 6 to start. Me having 6 means someone else has less than that. So the chances that I was going to get cut or have someone else throw a spade was kind of high, and that's what happened. Lisa on the right there threw out a spade, cut me, and they won that hand. Which brings us to the next thing, which is limiting your spread, right? The reason I didn't play the king was because I was wanting also to get rid of that ace, secure my second book that I had promised of 5. And when I'm playing my game, I want to make sure that I don't cause too much trouble going around the table. So from there, because Lisa won, they started playing. So they played the ace of diamonds, which was helpful for me to know. I got rid of my only diamond, which was the 8 of diamonds. So now I'm ready to cut diamonds, and I was very excited. Then they played hearts. I also only had 1 heart left, threw that out there. So the next time that they played any of the red cards, I was ready. I started throwing my spades out and was able to secure the 3rd of my hands. I was feeling pretty good here. But going back to DevOps, it's not just about one person or even one team. DevOps is usually not, we try not to separate them throwing things over the wall. It's hard to be effective sometimes when you have a lot of generalists, right? So you have to find the right balance of having generalists and having people who know deeper about how things work. It makes it a lot easier to run a business when everyone is able to work on their stuff, but at the same time knows enough to be able to help each other when gaps kind of evolve. You can't build a ton of stuff with the same pieces. Even in Legos, where it can be very cool to build some stuff, Honeycomb has some cool Legos out there, and I'm sure some of those pieces are all pretty different, and they make for some very, very cool designs at the end of the day. So when you're working with your other folks on your team, we want to limit our spread a little bit. We want to know everything that's going on, build some subject matter expert, but still know enough where if one of our teammates has to leave for whatever reason, we can step in and cover for them before they come back, but have that cooperation and trust that they usually got it overall. So finding that balance of knowing enough but not overstepping is a good one to start. Back to our game. At this point, I didn't have a lot of big cards remaining, so I just threw out my four of clubs, and I trusted that my partner probably hadn't had an opportunity to lead, so wanted to give them a chance to maybe start throwing out some cards. So throwing out my four of clubs, they weren't able to win that hand, which taught me that they don't have a ton of clubs, which I also kind of knew because I did have the ace and the king of clubs. In this case, we are playing ace high, so that two of diamonds is a regular two. Don't worry about it, all is well here. So Mike on the left won, so they started, and I saw that Bill already was able to cut with the two of spades. In this particular case, the next person also played hearts. I don't actually have to cut again. I don't want to butt heads with Bill. So what I was going to do is I just left it, threw out one of my clubs to get rid of some of those non-winning hands in my deck. So threw out the 6 and kept it pushing. Bill won. Bill threw out a K of diamonds. I still didn't have any diamonds, but didn't want to collide with him again. Threw out the 7, and they were able to win their hand. Next, Bill threw out the the queen of spades. This was very telling for me. Gonna make audience participate again. Does anyone know, right? Yes, I know I have the K and the ace of spades. What this told me as well is that we're going to definitely get all of our cards. So we're going to secure our bid because I already have 2. I only need 2 more. They already got their 2. So at this point, I know that we're definitely going to at least meet our bid. But then I can maybe start playing a little dirty and figure out maybe I can make the other people not meet theirs. So then I can start trying to figure out, okay, can I earn more than I bid to make sure of those 13 I got an above average amount? They only bid 5. We bid 7. Trying to do that math, 12. So there was 1 empty book remaining. If I win 2 extra, I know that I can make them go back by their bid, so they can go back by -50. And that's kind of monitoring everywhere. I did say I work at Datadog, which part of you would probably be like, oh my God, monitoring. But what I actually mean is there's a lot of different ways to keep tabs, and you have to in this world, we have to keep tabs on a lot of different stuff. A monitoring solution is one of them, but Confluence, Mail, Trello, Slack, Jira, RFCs, whatever you're using to keep track of all the work that's being done across the team can be pretty helpful. You want to know what's going on, and you want to be able to understand how other people are working, so you can have that collaboration kind of informally by being aware of what they're doing and finding opportunities to collaborate as they pop up, rather than completely having to be in all their meetings, for example. Another time when so I told you that I grew up playing a game similar to Spades. The game, you're allowed to play with 2 people. So my dad and I played a lot growing up, and my dad is someone who definitely keeps an eye on everything. Eventually I asked him what his trick was to remember what all of the cards were on the deck, especially when playing with other people. And he told me that he just pays attention to the bigger cards. So by the end of the game, he knows where of the ace and the king of all of the suits, so he just pays attention to 8 cards. You don't have to pay attention to everything, but you need to know the important things for your business, right? We generally have fortnightly updates at Datadog where people share their different RFCs that are going on. So looking into those, we also have demos. building that culture where people share the things that they're working on, and also the culture where you go in and it's easy to find for you to read what's happening can definitely make it easier. So having that documentation, finding out what's going on, reading everything that's happening can make the culture of DevOps at your organization continue to improve. And in my case, I eventually did start beating my dad, but he was definitely the type of person that was like, as a kid, I will beat you so you can learn faster. And honestly, it did help me as a person, so I appreciate him for that. Kind of wrapping up our game a little bit here, I already knew that we're going to win all the bid that we had. So as the game went around, made sure not to collide with my partner Bill there by throwing out a low spade. I had to play a spade because I did still have them. And then when I imagined that Bill might have run out of spades at that point. So when they threw out the 10 of diamonds, I made sure to go in with my king of spades to win that hand. I was wrong. They did still have a spade, but just a low one. So I started with the ace of spades, which made everyone else also play their spades. By this point, I also was like, the chances that there's still spades on the table wasn't too high. So I felt a little bit better when it came time to play my 10 of clubs that I likely might win that hand too, which I did, which ended up being that Bill and I made our bid, but also had two extra bags. So we got bags, but that made the other team go back by 50. I'm really showing you a good hand here because the next round I definitely was beat, but you know, every game has pros and cons. To recap really quickly, the culture always trumps the rules. There's always a variety of rules. We hear at these conferences that we go to what the current best practice is, but it can take a while to take that best practice, translate to your organization, and actually turn that into culture. But that's the only way that things actually happen. When you're working with other people, whether it's a spades partner, life partner, or teammates, you have to make sure that you limit your spread. You don't want to do everything, but you have to let other people contribute and find the right balance, but also keep an eye on all that's going on. We want to document things that are happening so other people can monitor what we're doing too and share that load a little bit. Also, gonna make a shout out that it is very helpful to be welcoming to new people. If you know any spades people in your life and they want to learn how to play, definitely encourage you to get an opportunity to play with them so they can get caught up too and so they can know the culture as well. And that's my talk.